Hello and welcome to another fun, exciting session of math. We are looking at Chapter 4, Section 5. This is the standalone section that we're teaching, and it is on converting measurement units, and it begins, we're going to begin on textbook page 290. So let's get started. All right, at the top of textbook page 290, you're going to see this table. It's called the customary conversions table that they provide for you. I will also be providing this to you for the quiz or the test that you are going to be taking on this unit. At the top of the table, it says each relationship in the table can be written as a ratio. For example, you know that 1 yard equals 3 feet. So you can use the ratio 3 feet equals 1 yard as 3 feet over 1 yard to convert from yards to feet. It's worth noting right here too that not only can you use 3 feet to 1 yard, so you need to go ahead and write this as I'm writing it, but you can also use 1 yard, equals 3 feet. So it doesn't, there's not only one position that you can put each of these numbers in. What goes on top and what goes on bottom is actually determined by what you're converting from and what you're converting to. So I'm going to refer back to this kind of like cross-simplifying. So you know how we cross-simplify, 2 and 2 out of two numbers that are across from one another. It works very similar with units. So let's go ahead and see how that works out. All right, so right here, just below the table, it says, like a unit rate. A unit ratio is one in which the denominator is 1 unit, and so the ratio is 3 feet over 1 yard. That is a unit ratio. Dimensional analysis is the process of including units of measurement as factors when you compute. So let's go ahead and start with our first example, which says convert 20 feet to inches. All right, so the first thing we've done here is we've written 20 feet equals how many inches. So this tells us what we've got and then what we're looking for. The next thing that we're going to do is go ahead and look on our table here, the customary conversions table. And if you'll notice right here is the conversion 1 foot equals 12 inches. So while yes, it's easy for you to just do these in your head, it is not as easy when you have a double conversion or when you're going between 2 units. So go ahead and look at the conversion table and find out which conversion you're going to be using. So we'll write that out to the side here in this bubble. So now to the side, I've written the conversion unit, which is 1 foot equals 12 inches. And now I'm going to set it up like a fraction problem. So I've got 20 feet on top, and I'm going to multiply it by. Now here's the thing. Remember how I said we were going to refer back to cross-simplifying? Notice the conversion unit is 1 feet equals 12 inches. We need to have that 1 foot on the bottom and the 12 inches on the top. And the reason we need that is because we're going to go ahead and cross-simplify the feet. So notice the terminology feet is gone. And so now since that's gone, now we're just going to multiply straight across the 20 times 12, and that gives us 240. And notice the only unit of measurement we have left that's not crossed out is going to be inches. So the answer to our problem is 20 feet equals 240 inches. And again, I want to remind you, yes, there are easier ways to do this specific problem, but this is about the process. It's not about just finding the answer. And you'll see as we get into more difficult problems why it's more about the process than the answer. So let's go ahead and start on A, B, and C now. You can pause the video now and work on those on your own. All right, so this first problem that we have here says 36 yards equals how many feet? So we're working on A right now. So the first thing we need to do is get our conversion. So feet in yards. We need to look down here and we can see in our table that 1 yard equals 3 feet. So I'm going to write 1 yard equals 3 feet. The next thing that we need to do is go ahead and set up the problem. So we're going to start with our 36 yards that they gave us times. And remember, we're cross-simplifying, so this 1 yard has to be on the bottom. So let's make sure we put 1 yard on the bottom, and then the 3 feet has to go on top. Now, because we put the 1 yard on the bottom, the whole purpose of that was so that we could cross-simplify out the yards. Now we're left with 36 times 3, and that is going to give us, let's go ahead and just do the math out to the side. So that'll give us 108, and I want you to notice again that the only dimension you're left with here is feet, so it's 108 feet. So if your problem looks any different than this, the one that you did on your own, even if you got the same answer, go ahead and erase your work because you need to make sure that you have it set up like this. It's very important that you have, that I can see the conversion happening, not that I just see this. This is not the only thing that you can have on your paper. All right, in this next problem, we see 3/4 of a ton equals how many pounds? So let's start by finding our conversion rate again, and it looks like we've got 1 ton. If you notice here, let me go ahead and 1 ton equals 2,000 pounds. So off to the side in a little bubble, I'm going to write that 1 ton equals 2,000 pounds. And the reason I'm doing that is because I need to first start with my conversion rate. So then we're going to go to the next step, which is the same one that we did before. We're going to write the problem, 3/4 of a ton times, now remember we need to have the tons on the bottom because we're going to be cross-simplifying it. So 1 ton goes down here and 2,000 pounds goes up here. So now we're just going to go ahead and cross out that t. That was the whole reason why we did that. And then we can also cross-simplify at this point the 4 and the 2,000. So let's go ahead and do that too. So we can divide out the 4, so we get 1 there, and we get 5, because 5 times 4 is 20, and then 100. So now we're left with 500 here. Then 500 times 3, which is from right here, 500 times 3, gives us 1,500. And I just want to point out again that the only unit of measurement that you have that's not been crossed out is going to be your pounds. So 3/4 of a ton is going to be equal to 1,500 pounds. It is completely necessary that you have the LB at the end. In these units, if you don't, they're wrong because we don't have the conversion rate there, or the unit if you don't have that. So that's very important. And if your problem looks anything like this, if your problem doesn't look exactly like this, if you've left out the bubble that you see right here, if you've left out any of the cross-simplifying, you want to go back and fix that now, please. All right, so let's go ahead and look at this last example, example C. It says 1 1/2 quarts equals how many pints? So let's first start by identifying the conversion rate. So we have quarts to pints, which is right here in our table. 1 quart equals 2 pints. So 1 quart equals 2 pints. Put that in a bubble here. Now we want to set up our problem. So let's go ahead and switch colors so that we can do that. So we first start with 1 1/2 quart. Oops, don't need the quart. Times, and then remember we need to have, hold on. Quart times, and remember we need to have quarts on the bottom. So we look at our conversion and we see 1 quart down here equals 2 pints up here. Okay, so we'll cross simplify out that quart right away so that we can get rid of that. And now we have the problem 1 1/2 times 2, because that's what you have up here, 1 1/2 times 2. So we could even change that into a decimal if we wanted to multiply it. We could even use it as an improper fraction, however you want to do that. So 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3, so we've got 3/2 times 2, and that actually cross-simplifies out, and you get 3. So 1 1/2 times 2 is equal to 3, and notice the only unit of measurement you have left is pints. So your answer for this problem is going to be 3 pints. Again, if your problem looks different than this, you want to make sure to correct it now, please. All right, let's look on textbook page 291 now. On 291, it says Marco mixes 1/4 of a cup of fertilizer, with soil before planting each bulb. How many fluid ounces of fertilizer does he use per bulb? So what we're looking for is 1/4 of a cup, and I do expect you to write this as well. You can write it out into the margins, which is right over here if you'd like to, wherever you can find space on your paper. So let me go ahead and put that in black so that there we go. So we're starting with 1/4 of a cup, and it says Marco uses 1/4 of a cup of fertilizer with soil before planting each bulb. How many fluid ounces of fertilizer does he use per bulb? So all they're really asking you to do is take that 1/4 of a cup and convert it into fluid ounces. So we're going to look on our conversion table. Let me go ahead and get that back in here. All right, so it's kind of small, but you can see here that 1 cup is going to be equal to 8 fluid ounces. So 1 cup equals 8 fluid ounces. Put that in a bubble off to the side. Now we can go, okay, we've got cups on top, so let's put cups on the bottom here. 1 cup is equal to 8 fluid ounces. We're immediately, and I probably should not have written cup, I should have written just C. I'm immediately going to cross out that C, because that's the whole purpose of putting the cup on the bottom. And then I'm left with 1/4 times 8. So I can actually also cross simplify the 4 and the 8. So I get 1 here, and I get 2 here because I'm dividing by 4. Right? And so then 1 times 2 is 2, and I am left with 2 fluid ounces. And that is also the answer that they got. So even though you see this problem done for you off to the side, math is about doing. So you actually have to do it in order to learn it. So it's important that you're rewriting everything that I'm writing here for you, including all the bubbles as well. So go ahead and pause the video now and try D. Alright, so if you look at the top of the screen here, I have the customer unit table again, and I'm looking here at number 2, or example 2, and it says, I'm sorry, D, my apologies. It says Jen runs 1/8 of a mile before tennis practice. How many feet does she run before practice? So basically we're asking 1/8 of a mile is equal to how many feet. So it's important that you pull that information out of the problem first. Then we want to look and see what the conversion for miles to feet is. So look on our little table here, and we find out that 1 mile equals, oops, and it's MI. Sorry about that. M is just meter. All right, so 1 mile equals 5,280 feet. Okay, so we're going to put that off to the side. So now we know we have our 1/8 of a mile that she runs. We're going to multiply that by, now remember, and this isn't the best representation of this. Let me put the miles back up here again. Remember, miles is on top, so we need miles to be on the bottom here. So 1 mile equals 5,280 feet. And our very first step here is going to be to cross out that mile, because that was the whole purpose of getting them set up like this. And then we can also probably cross simplify 8 and 5,280, but let's just go ahead and double check off to the side just to make sure. So 5,280 divided by 8. And okay, so we have 8 times 6 is 48, and we have 4 left over, drop the 8. Then we have 8 times 6 again is 48. We have a 0. Now right here is a mistake that a lot of people commonly make when doing the division. We drop our 0 here, and we really need to say, okay, how many times does 8 go into 0? When you have these double zeros on the same line, that's your indicator that you're going to need a 0 in your answer. Okay, so now you can go, okay, 0, and then we're done with the problem. So 660, and remember the unit that is left here is feet. So your answer for this problem, as you can see off to the right here, should be 660 feet. All right, so now let's go ahead and take a look at converting smaller units to larger units. So for these problems, it says, remember that ratios are 1 yard over 3 feet and 3 feet over 1 yard. They're equivalent. So that's what I mentioned in the beginning of the video. To convert from smaller units to larger units, you want to choose the ratio that allows you to divide out the common units. So again, this is where that cross simplifying comes in. So you want to write that right there. And that's why I reiterated that as we were going through those previous examples. That was the reason why we were putting it opposite in the ratio. So let's go ahead and look at this first example. It says convert 15 quarts to gallons. So the first thing you want to do is look on your table. And I've gone ahead and placed the table over the rest of the problem because I would rather you work the problem out individually. So now we're going to look at, we're going from 15 quarts to gallons. So let's write that problem out to the side. 15 quarts equals how many gallons? Let's see, did they use G? They used GAL. Okay, so 15 quarts equals how many gallons? So that's our question. So now we're going to look at the table and go, okay, we've got quarts and gallons, quarts and gallons. Here's 1 gallon is equal to 4 quarts. Perfect. So now we're going to set up our problem again, just as we did before. So we've got 15 quarts. Whoops. Times, now we know that 1 gallon is equal to 4 quarts, but before when we were using like the unit ratio with 1 on the bottom, that was because it worked out for that conversion, but now we're converting out the quarts. So we need to use the 4 quarts on the bottom. 4 quarts is equal to 1 gallon. And remember, the reason we're doing that is for this very next step, which is to cross-simplify out the quarts. So that's why that's super, super important right there. So now we've got 15 times 1 equals 15 on the top, and we've got nothing on the bottom, times 4 gives you 4. Your only unit of measurement left is going to be gallons, and then we're going to have to change this 15 over 4. So let's think about how we can change that. 4 times 3 is 12, so we've got 12 there. 13, 14, 15, so that leaves us with 3 left over, fourths of a gallon. So your final answer for this problem would be that 15 quarts is equal to 3 3/4 of a gallon. Now in the book, they have it as 3.75. I would accept either answer, 3.75 gallons or 3 3/4. Either would be fine. So you would have gotten the 3.75 by dividing it out through decimals. And I just want to point out the example that they use where they show you the non-example, and they said that the example is 12 feet equals, 12 feet times 1 yard over 3 feet is correct for this conversion because, and the whole reason is because you can cross simplify out the feet so that you're left with the yards. However, 12 feet times 3 feet on the top and 1 yard on the bottom is not correct. And the reason this is not correct is because you can't cross simplify anything out. You've made the problem twice as bad. Now you technically have 2 feet on top. So that's why that particular method won't work. Go ahead and pause the video now and you can try E, F, and G on your own. All right, so for E we see that they have 2,640 feet equals how many miles? So again, step one is going to be to look at this conversion table and find out what our feet to mile conversion is. And we can see right here we have 1 mile. And remember, we need this in our bubble. 1 mile equals 5,280 feet. Perfect. Now we start our problem. Let's go ahead and do that in purple. And we've got 2,640 feet on top times. So what does that mean? That means we have to have this 5,280 feet on the bottom. 5,280 feet equals 1 mile. And remember, the reason we do that is so that we can do this next step, which is to cross simplify those feet. So now we've got 2,640 on top, so we have 2,640 over 5,280, and then the only unit of measurement we have left is miles. Now, we probably don't want to stop right here, just even by virtue of the fact that we see these 2 zeros here. We know that that can all be divided by 2 to simplify, but I'm going to take a guess here and say that 2,640 is exactly half of 5,280. So let's just double check and see. 2,640 times 2 gives us 5,280. So my guess was correct. So in simplifying over here, we actually are going to, and again, this is what we have right here. We have 2,640 over 5,280, and remember this is miles. But we want to go ahead and just divide out 2,640, divide out 2,640, and again, this step is just us simplifying. So this has nothing to do with the conversion, we're just simplifying, and we get 1/2 of a mile. So our final answer here is 1/2 of a mile for E. All right, so for F, we're going to go ahead and take a look at our conversion table. We're converting 100 ounces to pounds. So let's find our ounces to pounds conversion. And right here, we see 1 pound equals 16 ounces. So let's write 1 pound equals 16 ounces. That's a Z. And then in purple, we'll go ahead and write our problem. So we get 100 ounces to begin with. Make sure that you have the unit there. Then we have our multiplication sign, and we have 1 pound equals 16 ounces. Now remember, the 16 ounces has to be on the bottom. And it has to be on the bottom because of this next step, which we always do in green right now, is to cross simplify out those ounces. So now we can just multiply straight across. We have 100 times 1, which gives us 100. Nothing times 16 is still 16. And then the only unit of measurement we have left is pounds. So now let's simplify that out even further because, we have the bigger number on top. So let's think about how many times we can get 16 into 100. So if this is kind of close to 20, so I would say probably about 5 times. So let's try that math out to the side. 30, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so that's 80. We can probably get one more in there, it looks like. So 16 times 6 gives me 36. That gives me 96. Perfect. That's pretty close. So this 100, and again, this just came from right here. So we've got 100 over 16 pounds. We're just simplifying this now to make it a nicer looking number. So let's do that. And we said that it would go in 6 full times, so it's 6. Remember, we have how many left over? 96 to 100 is going to give us 4 left over. 16ths, and again, this is still pounds, but you should notice right away that that 4 and the 16 right there can still be simplified even further. So we're actually going to divide out the 4 from the top and the bottom. So divide by 4, divide by 4. And we get our final answer, which is 6 1/4 of a pound. So that is our final answer. So if yours didn't look like all this and you didn't get all this work, you want to make sure to get that on there now. All right, for G, it looks like we have 3 cups equals how many pints? So again, our first step is going to be to look at the conversion table. We have cups and pints. Let's see where we find that. Let's see. All right, so right here we see that 1 pint is equal to 2 cups. So let's write that out to the side. 1 pint equals 2 cups. Swoop, swoop, swoop. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and change this and write our problem out. So we have 3 cups times, remember cups has to go on the bottom, so 2 cups will go on the bottom, over 1 pint. And remember the whole purpose of this was so that we could cross simplify out those cups. And then we're going to go ahead and just multiply straight across. 3 times 1 is 3. Nothing times 2 is 2. And we're going to go ahead and, whoops, forgot to put the unit there. So the only thing we're left here for the unit is going to be pints. Then we're going to make this into a mixed number. So we get 1 1/2 of a pint. So that is our final answer there. All right, so right here, let's go ahead and look at the word problem that we have on the top of textbook page 292. So we've changed to textbook page 292, and it says, for example 4, Yumika needs 4 1/2 feet of fabric to make a costume for a play. How many yards of fabric does she need? So you want to make sure that you're really good with these types of problems. These fabric problems are definitely going to show up on some tests for you because they seem to show up quite frequently in standardized tests as well. So let's go ahead and look. We've got 4 1/2 feet of fabric, and all they're really looking for you to do, it says, how many yards of fabric does she need? So all they're asking you for is to change this 4 1/2 feet to yards. So let's go ahead and write that off to the side. Our problem is 4 1/2 feet equals how many yards? And I'm aware it's already written there for you. I want you to write exactly what I'm writing, please. Then we need to look at our conversion table over here, and we need to find out what the conversion for that is. So we should see over here that we've got 1 yard is equal to 3 feet. So let's go ahead and write that. Perfect. All right, so now let's set the problem up. To set the problem up, we're going to start with what they gave us, 4 1/2 feet. Times, now remember this feet right here has to go on the bottom, so let's go ahead and put that on the bottom, over 1 yard. Now it gets a little crazy looking here because you have this 4 1/2 feet, and then you have, so this is a mixed number. Let's go ahead and turn this into an improper fraction just to make it a little easier for us to work with. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9, so now we have 9 over 2 feet times 1 yard over 3 feet. So you can see that that actually sort of worked out some of our problems for us because now we can cross simplify out the feet, which was our whole intention, but we can also cross simplify out the 3 and the 9 by dividing it by 3. So we now have 1 here on the bottom and we have 3 here on the top. So let's go ahead and go back and finish up the problem now. 3 times 1 is equal to 3. 2 times 1, so we have the 2 here and the 1 here, is equal to 2. And remember, the only unit that we have left that's not been cross-simplified out is yards. So now our very last step is just going to change this mixed number here, this improper fraction, into a mixed number. So now we have 1 1/2 yards. So this is our final answer here. So you want to make sure that you have all of this written out to the side as well, in addition to what they have written in the book. All right, so your homework now is going to be to do textbook page 292, numbers 1 through 6 only, and I've actually done a big favor for you here and started by showing you an example of how I want the first problem to look. I've not finished the problem for you, but what I've done is I've written the original problem right there, and then I have my second step was over here to write the bubble that has my conversion units in it, 1 yard equals 3 feet. And then I wrote my new problem right here, which is 3 feet over 1 yard and 5 1/3 yards. And then just down here, remember how we did on the last problem where you have to convert it so that you can make it an improper fraction to work with it more easily. That's what I've done for you here. So from here, you should be able to take it and finish up. And like I said, need you to do numbers 1 through 6 in order to get credit for your homework. I look forward to seeing you in class.